All right, well, thank you, Jay, and congratulations, Jerry, and well done. I like the attitude of you're in the execution phase instead of the assessment phase of the challenges and problems for the United States. I appreciate the opportunity to share a couple of thoughts with everyone here. Our focus today, myself and two on the panel, is going to be getting organized for the execution for the last mile, for the last 100 meters in the fight. And that's tied to what has been presented so far that we have heard the last day and a half. And also, we know that I think that war does not wait for us to get ready. When you get alerted, you got to be ready to go right then. And so if your technology is not ready, if it's not approved, if it's not integrated into the force, trained with for deployment, it's too late. It's an ongoing process. Everybody understands that, but there's some things that can be corrected to make it go faster. So what I'd like to do is just tie a little bit of Ukraine, of what we've seen on humanitarian and also other missions in that country for the last 4 years now. So what you're about to see is a GUR. It's a combination of a special operations and an intel unit in Ukraine that we've worked with that's moving from the rear area to the front line under nets to avoid drone strikes. The 11th time that we went to Ukraine, that wasn't there. It's only been there the last 2 times we've gone. And it just shows how the innovation, even if it's primitive, has saved many lives just putting nets over highways. And you can imagine the monumental task of doing a task like that because it's all done by hand. Okay, just an idea here. Drones are everywhere. They're like mosquitoes. And in this case, the net stopped the drone. It's almost like an RPG hitting a cage to protect a reactive armor around a tank. So that fisherman's net caught the round, exploded before it hit, could penetrate the windshield of that Humvee. But it's still a good testament to American Humvee because it's an armored Humvee and it did well. We had the opportunity to travel through this last trip 29 miles of fishnet. And I say fishnet because the idea, from what I'm told, came from a Odessa fisherman who donated the nets in a couple of the areas, and now, of course, they're made out of nylon and other materials. But that primitive innovation has saved probably thousands of lives so far. But you can't use it everywhere, obviously. So these trips to Ukraine have really had my mind turned back all the way to Vietnam, all the other fights that we've been in to date on innovation with technologies and the training that's required. So what we do over there is we deliver surgical equipment to the point of need. That means we skip giving anything to the border to transport. It means we skip ministries, warehouses. We go to our own distribution point and hand carry it all the way to the point of need. Point of need is 5 to 30 kilometers from the front line. Those are the guys that don't get everything they need or need it the most. This is stuff for trauma surgeons, vascular surgeons, medics, physician assistants, nurses, combat nurses, those types. This last trip we did from American donations, 1.4 million. It's not a lot, but it's a lot when you're going to the front line to 3 different places, around Kharkiv, Kherson, and Kromonosk by Donetsk Oblast, where they really need it, where either through corruption or black market, it doesn't get to them. We also teach trauma training, a 2-week course near the front. We do that because it reduces the time they're gone to Poland or Hohenfels, Germany, or Romania, or whatever the case may be, by half. That means they can train just back from the forward edge, most of the time at least 30 kilometers back. It was set up that way because of artillery range, which has obviously changed the dynamics right now. But we usually do a train-the-trainer. We require 10 train from everyone we teach. We can't enforce that. but it's come out now to about, from all the trips, over 1,000 medics. We also exchange TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. This is a big deal because I'm amazed at how much information does not get to the active services. We gave a class the other day to a unit at Fort Bragg that teaches drone, counter-drone, C5I techniques, covering concealment, the camouflage, the deception, etc. And I was surprised at what they had not known that we brought back. Not that we're special. I guess it's because they're not allowed to go to certain areas to collect that information. So it's real-time TTPs. We also established 4 technology hubs. One with the 65th Brigade near the front by Kherson, one with the Rage Brigade, which is over by Kromenos, closer to the Donetsk area to the east, and then one with the Special Operations Command, and then one with a group out of the Minister of Defense's office. The last thing was continuing our evaluation and confirmation of rare earth elements and minerals in Ukraine. We've been doing that for about 2 years. And you hear and read a lot of different things, but we have now determined what is available, and we're focused on within now, today, to the next year. Because some things are available, processed in powder or granular form. Some are in slabs of titanium or beneficiated ore to small ore like natural graphite as an example. And 3 of the 17 rare earth elements. And we're working some programs on that right now, trying to work with the U.S. government. We've briefed several times, and also business to business or investor groups that are going to work with U.S. businesses for the industrial base. Our concept of operations, we call it foxhole to ministry. We started out going to the ministry and then in the foxhole. It didn't work out too well because a lot of the information was sanitized. By going to the foxhole, the sergeant down there, the lieutenant, they don't lie. They tell you what's happening and what they need. We focus on that, and from that we build a program, and then we go back and talk to the ministry. And then we can determine and tailor our training and what's needed for delivery to the front lines. From the 4 years now, it's been a very good experience to understand how the fight's going. Everybody in here pretty well has been following it. You know initially what Putin wanted to do when he attacked Ukraine, why that failed. A lot of leadership issues with the Russians, a lot of logistics issues with the Russians, the same as combined arms operation, air and ground operations. And so then it transitioned to Ukrainians retaking some terrain, kind of a modified air-land kind of battle thing, combined arms. It's got a little bit more sophisticated down by Kherson, where they, with Abrams and Bradleys and things, as some of you here know, combined arms attacks. But there were some issues that caused them not to be able to do certain things, and that was the Russians changed their defensive posture from about 200 meters to 500 meters, which is deeper than a Miklik, as an example. And because of the terrain, part of your analysis that you would have to do, has a lot of water, no-go terrain for heavy vehicles. And when they're in a linear line, and what happens, the first tank, the second tank, last tank, whatever the case may be, it's pretty tough. Can't use dismounted infantry very well on that terrain either, and so that caused some problems with combined arms on the Ukrainian side. If people want to talk in more depth on that later, I'd be glad to do so, but that's just what their commanders on the ground told us. Now, it's a static line fight right now. It's like World War I with technology overhead, whether it be drones, EW, other factors that we've all been talking about. The first 2 years, artillery was king. That's been replaced pretty much by drones. Wounds are even changed. Before, there were a lot of leg wounds because of mines. and some of the other type of fighting, being in a vehicle and that against artillery and those type of munitions. Now it's pretty much upper body, arms, head. The way that a drone hits a vehicle from the rear or the side, or in a trench line, think about it in that way too. The kind of angle of attack, how people are hunting down people. So the wounds even change. If you go to the hospitals, and we've gone to every level of care, from a stabilization point to a forward surgical team, to the regional hospital, to the general hospitals in like Lviv and Kiev, those places, the wounds have changed. Over 100,000 amputees, only about 3,000 serviced. Terrible wounds, and the casualty rate on both sides is probably about twice as what's reported. So the way the fight is going has changed. Very, very tough to do any kind of maneuver, to do a breakthrough, expand the gap, and exploit that victory. Extremely tough. What is working is a deep attack. The deep attack, unconventional warfare, is working very well. Russia doesn't control the Black Sea anymore. Why? Water drones, surface and subsurface, and as well as, of course, air-to-ground missiles and those type of things. Also, foot infiltrations into Russia, by foot, by civilian cars. The attack on Kursk with armored forces and some autonomous units was very successful, but that hasn't been done for a while. But Special Operations is still doing foot infiltration and attacks. And it's the same with using drones or missiles to do so in a deep attack. Everything else is a static defense. To achieve 100 meters a week is a big deal. Think about that, 100 meters a week, where on one try, the Russians may lose 500 soldiers. And what's tough about it right now, the only thing they're using to get through is 2 to 5 men infiltrating in to get a hold into a piece of a city, a town, and through communications, mostly actually it's a cell phone with Google or whatever they're using at the time, to then talk to a unit to drop a glide bomb on a certain point to break the breach, and then pour a massive assault into that breach. Usually losing most of their people, and but gaining maybe 100 yards. So 100 meters a day is quite unusual, and some of the doctrine we have on how we do land power, how we do combined arms, joint ops, the use of helicopters, as an example, is non-existent pretty much. Drones are everywhere. You cannot evacuate hardly any of you wounded the way we think about it, the old golden hour care. If your ranger buddy, your buddy in a foxhole next to you, doesn't know how to stop a bleed, do some kind of respiratory work on yourself, on you, you're dead. 80% bleed out for the death is what normally happens on death. And the problem is you don't get evacuated right away. So then you have a lot of infection issues that occur, staying in a trench line 3 days, waiting to be evacuated by a wheelbarrow, by a poncho, or by a ground drone. Most evacuations that involve technology are ground drones, and they've done very well. But they're all integrated with deception. They're integrated with aerial drones. It's very tough. Drone operations are done from two hide sites. There's a hide site that has a 4-man team that handles the relay, handles the RNS, and then does the attack or reconnaissance, whatever the mission may be. The other hide site is the cache site for drones. And they have a way they move them back and forth. Their infiltrations are very, very, very detailed. It's almost like a long-range reconnaissance patrol in Vietnam or some other kind of recce unit, how they move in and move out. Or sniper hide is a good example of how well they're constructed. It's the only way they can get resupply in and how they can get people out. The one I was in a root cellar in a village with my son and a couple other people, they only can occupy them for 3 to 4 days or whatever. They got to change position. And that one happened to get hit right after we left, and we lost one of our Ukrainian brothers and 3 of them wounded. The medical thing is probably now, in my mind, as important as bullets. Because a troop has morale if he knows you got a medical system behind you to fight. If you don't, morale is not good. The Russians are not as advanced as Ukrainians. In fact, the Russians follow a lot of their organizations with crematory units to dispose of the bodies. So you can imagine the effect that would have on a mother back home. And it's terrible. It's a different moral thought process. Now, how do you organize in this kind of fight? This is important because this, again, has to do with technology and your mindset of how you operate. If you're a brigade commander, as an example, even a battalion, brigade, and division commander, they don't have really division commanders, but that size, they go right to corps, that size organization. You can't do the FOBs in a command post like we used to. I don't think if we went on the ground Iran that we could do that. You will not survive. That's what's targeted. Hospitals, ambulances are targeted, log depots are targeted, and command posts are targeted to eliminate the command, control, and communications ISR. They're eliminated. I met a brigade commander, used to be an airborne battalion commander. He was now an infantry brigade commander outside of Kherson. Spent the night with him in his bunker. What did that look like? When we drove to the position, immediately we were told, take your helmet and body armor off. We were already in civilian clothes. You will walk only in groups of 2. We'll walk through this village. This is where our command post is. We hide in the open. Think about that comment. Brigade, CP. We hide in the open. When's the last time I saw that? Vietnam. VC, and think of the movie We Were Soldiers Once. That brigade headquarters dug into that side of that mountain. They hid pretty much in the open. There was no antennas hanging out everywhere, no tracks, 113s, command posts, no tents, nothing. It was hidden. We walked a couple hundred meters to a field that had haystacks in it. He opened the door of the haystack. We went down 30 feet. Inside that was 300 meters of tunnels and rooms, 30 feet down. Inside the first room, it was a TOC, the Tactical Operations Center. It looked like Star Wars under the ground. About 18 monitors, all the battalions, all the drone units stuff, all the enemy intel for the enemy, and the enemy logistics support, whatever. He was totally hidden in that city that was retaken by the Ukrainians. The Russians had occupied it. He had retaken it. So the thought process of how you do command post and run a battle, to me, has changed, and it's not going to just happen in Ukraine. I'm not saying it's going to happen everywhere, but you have to be able to run your brigade operations, as an example, in a different way that we're accustomed to. C5ISR, denied. Commander intent is more important than ever. Whatever the commander's intent is, this is how you're going to fight and what you're going to do if you don't hear from me, is more important than ever. At least the 5 W's, who, what, where, when, and how. You know, the Iranians, the Republican Guards and those guys, they just did the same thing. When their command and control was severed, their autonomous organizations had orders hidden in the ground or wherever, just like the North Koreans. This reminded me of DMZ as well, that you will strike Kuwait, Bahrain, or whatever with these Shahed missiles or this weapon system or that one until told different. You do it on your own. You don't hear from me in 48 hours. You do it. And you do it every day and a half or whatever you do. That's a tough force to fight. But commander's intent, think about how much we talk about that in the U.S. military. It's being done now, real time, always, the commander's intent, how important it is, especially our enemy. Secured supply lines, tough. It's a gun shoot running down Combat Alley to try to deliver food, water, bullets, whatever it is, medical supplies. It's very tough, very tough. And it's tactical and it's also strategic. Ukraine has a strategic problem, not as bad because they're in internal lines, right? They're defending their country. Russia's projecting, but they're right next door. They speak the same language in some cases, 80% or so. So it's a little bit different than us, where we have extended lines and we fight over there. Not really at home, except Homeland Security, but we fight over there. So how do we look at that? Well, I can tell you right now, my view of it is the United States CONUS is our rear area of operations. What that means is that if we don't have API or KSM for medicine, because China controls 80% of it, we're screwed. If we don't have rare earth elements or minerals to do the industrial base or make ammunition, we're screwed. And many in this room know what the supply availability is right now from our 5 strategic depots. It's like petroleum reserve. It has to be there. And I know what ASPR's doing and BARDA and all that with NIH, and I know a little bit about DLA with what they're doing on that, but our rear area is not secured today if we have a 2-war front. I don't know how we would do it. I remember being an ops in the Pentagon and planning that. I just don't know how you do it with what we have right now in order to fulfill the need to make more ammunition, to do whatever we have to do to fight a war and win it. So that's a concern. So it's not just at the tactical level, it's also at the strategic level, obviously, for the United States. And our doctrine is what? Fight the close battle, the deep battle, and the rear area. Rear area is United States. Deep battle is some of the stuff we talked about with the Ukrainians denying the Black Sea to the Russians, or hitting their few depots or whatever. The front line, it's static until someone comes up with an innovative way to punch through. The other is on MET-T. Remember the MET-T in the military training, if you had it? M for mission, E for enemy, T for terrain, T for troops available. I think there's some more letters now, but I'm antiquated a little bit. But right now, everything is compressed in action, the compressed action chains on the front line of the rear area tech. It's important to know your enemy and the operational environment, and that's a challenge for the United States. As commander of the Ranger Regiment, one of the soldiers says, "Hey, sir, what's our area of operation?" What is it for the Ranger Regiment? It's the world. It's the world. There is no specific AO like it is for Special Forces groups, or EUCOM, or SOUTHCOM, or whatever the case may be. That's pretty tough. Mountains, desert, jungle, plains, Arctic, whatever the case may be. So it's really tough on that, and to tie technology with tactics to that terrain is very difficult in your operation environment. The asymmetric killers, when I started in the military, I thought was IEDs. We call them booby traps in Vietnam, then later on, guys in here that have been in Afghanistan and Iraq, IEDs, same thing. Haven't been wounded by one, they're terrifying. I'm afraid of that, most, besides maybe RPGs, a few other things, more than anything else. What it replaced, I mean, you go back in history to tanks, airplanes, all that, but let's just take Vietnam on, IEDs, and what is it now? Biggest killer, first of all, in Iraq and Afghanistan was IEDs. That's why they started JADO and some of those other organizations to counter that. Right now it's drones. Though I don't think drones are going to be the biggest killer forever. I think we can defeat drones. It's just a matter of time. I think it'll happen. But definitely it's in our face right now, and we got to live with it. And then the other thing is the troops. It's not discussed very much. We probably, in this 2 days, we should have discussed troops a little bit more. The human factor, human performance, requirements. You know, when you're in a trench line and you said you're going to go to the front for a month maybe, and you end up being in there for 3 years because you don't have enough soldiers to replace you in a cycle of training, fighting, and recuperating, you have a hard morale problem, especially if your mobility base is bad. Problem with Ukraine right now. So living in the front is a tough thing in trench. It's just like, though, laying on a green ramp in a parachute waiting to go. It's just like below deck on a troop ship. What's next? Where are we going? Do I have the stuff I need? You know, a sergeant, a lieutenant, even a commander of a unit does not want, if he needs a piece of equipment, he doesn't want to wait 2 years after he changes command to get it. They want it now for a reason. There's a reason they want it now, because they know it'll keep them alive and they can kill the enemy. So anything that can be done to speed up the process, it's almost a moral requirement. DOW has to say that. They have to do that. There is the need for speed, as was mentioned the other day. And you got to take that technology, integrate it with tactics to make sure it works, and apply it. And that speed goes anywhere from a jet fighter pilot, it goes all the way down to a soldier, a soft guy going in a room and making a decision to shoot a person or not, doing a hostage rescue. Smooth as fast. Stay calm and carry on. That's the kind of training, and they can't do that if they don't feel comfortable with the piece of equipment they get. Many in here know about the OODA loop. OODA. Observe, orient, decide, and act. Invented by what? Fighter pilot, right? The Air Force. I think it's more important than ever. To make that discriminatory shot in a hostage rescue situation is just like the time is split second, just like a fighter pilot, I think. Same kind of thing. And not only is that the technology, I got a great pistol, I can really do this, but it's also human performance, the cognitive skill training, those kind of things with that technology and with that man or woman. So a lot of talk on AI versus human performance. I look at it this way. It's kind of simple, being an old infantry guy originally. 1 foot in the library and 1 foot in the street. I get my training, I get my schoolwork, I study because of my discipline, whatever the case may be, but if I don't get experience in the street, I can't smell it. I can't smell it. So that human performance has to have you get that feel. Germans in World War II taught that. I'm trying to think of the German word, I can't think of it now. But they taught that to their officer corps. How do you feel that battle? I'm not sure AI can do that part yet. The other thing is, when we're talking about applying technology and fighting, this is an old Texas Ranger quote that I stole. When the terrain varies from the map, you got to go with the terrain. Think about it. When you have a plan and conditions change, I just left the parachute door, I just left the ramp of the helicopter, I just got off the landing craft on a beach, right? And the first shot's fired, crap changes, right? Right away. You need a plan to start with, but you better be ready for sequels and diversions to that plan. Just like Patton said, 85% of a plan violently executed will carry the day any time. He's got something there. So that OODA loop thing is very important. Observe, orient, decide, and act. And so now that's even faster than it was when the guy wrote it. So you got to teach people that and teach it with the kit that they have or they're going to get quickly. The other thing is, has anybody ever seen a Russian map? Seriously. I commanded 3,000 Russian paratroopers in Bosnia. I thought it was crazy at the beginning, but I finally get it. And learned from what the Russians did and what they had, and saw one of their maps. Their maps are beautiful works of art. I have one at home. It's written on paper with pen. How do we do our maps? Acetate with grease pencil. Why? Terrain varies from the map. But that lieutenant, that captain in the Russian army is going to follow that ink-drawn map in his attack. One, it's the Soviet doctrine, which is screwed up. But the other is that they can't deviate. They have a hard time. And even the Ukrainian army now has still got some remnants of that, especially older guys in their army like me. They're hard for them to change. So when the terrain varies from the map, you got to go with the map. And what that also means is, stealing from Shakespeare, by indirection, find direction out. What's the unconventional, asymmetrical technology advantage or tactic that'll win the day? SOF gets taught that a lot, but our whole military forces needs to be trained in that. The other thing, someone mentioned public-private partnership. I believe a must. If you went to war college, it's a simple thing. They call it DIME, D-I-M-E, diplomacy, or /politics, I guess, information/intel. Military and economics. Who does economics and military very well? China. Easier for them, they're a communist country. But if we don't do the economics and the military together with the effort, and people mention this quite a bit today and yesterday, I don't see how we get there from point A to B fast enough. So whole of nation, whole of effort, joint combined, and with allies. I don't think I've ever been to one of my wars where I didn't have an ally working with me of some sort. Got to have allies. And one, they probably know that particular AO a little bit better. And that's all an art, how you put that together to work. So economically, that makes sense because the return on investment is what people want, either in lives or in money. Like the Black Sea Fleet, crippled, deep strikes, unconventional warfare to break the backbone, the supply lines of the enemy. That includes information operations as well. A couple more quick points. Technology versus tactics. Got the requirements and the problems. You got tech solutions they're going to have, and they must fit the tactics. How to fight it, and how is it used by different services like Army Marines. Now, there are some legacy systems that I love. M2, Mod Deuce, 50 caliber. That's still alive and well. If you're on the other end of it, you understand what I'm saying. How about the A-10 Hog? Going to be retired I don't know how many times. The Air Force guys know that much better than I do. Still in use. Tech hubs are required for speed. That's why North Carolina, we're trying to do one set up here at the Northwest with our company, talking to Sagamore about that. But I think that the tech hubs in Ukraine are going to give us information in a 24 or 48-hour cycle, faster than going back and forth, back and forth. United Kingdom is another example that we're working with. We're working on a proof-first accelerator to speed the process up on a TRL, technical readiness level process. And then we're going to demonstrate with personnel, retired vets, demonstrate with personnel, or take it to Ukraine and combat prove it, which we've done a couple times already to speed up the process. Someone said Shark Tank in a talk a little while ago on land forces. We have established, you might call, field Shark Tank. And what we did is that we focus on a warfighter first, again, the foxhole, working our way up, where a platoon sergeant, company commanders, wing commander, ship captain says, I need this, I need it now. What can you do to help? We combine a technology company with some operators like veterans, with business investors, with academia, remember, 1 foot in the library, academia, and then hopefully some government reps. Get it approved fast, get it in the hands, rapid fielding, train it properly, which equals readiness. To what? To achieve overmatch against unconventional or conventional forces, whatever the case may be. There's no excuse for the United States of America not to be able to kick anybody's rear end. I know we can do it. 250 years. No other country's been in many types of wars as we've been in for 250 years. Think about it. Air, land, or sea. There's no reason why we can't. And I have a problem, Jerry, when you have 5 presidential executive orders and it takes so long to follow the order. I'm used to that. I don't get that. I know there's reasons, okay? I'm not that naive, but when he puts out an order, I don't care if it's Biden or if it's Trump, whoever it is, it ought to be obeyed. He's the commander-in-chief. And they ought to move fast. And that's from the bottom up as well. And so that's a problem. The executive orders are out there. The money can be moved. I know there's money out there. It has to be moved the right way and executed. So what we're going to do is we're going to do in the next event, in conjunction with Sagamore, we're going to do something called Osprey on the X. Why do we call it that? The X. What's the X? The X is the objective. The X is the point of need. The X is where you're going to win the battle, whatever the case may be. Osprey on the X, July 17, 18, North Carolina. And there we're going to try to close the gap between innovation, technology, product, investors that'll be there, operators, academia, manufacturers, and hopefully government reps. They've been invited. It'll host an event along with Sagamore, like I said, and other partners to close the gap between innovation and execution. It's all about overmatch. It's all about the American spirit to win. 250 years, a great year to do this. Resilience, and the way I like it, be the hunter, not the prey. So I'll stop there and ask Dino and Nikki to come up for a couple more comments. Thank you.